The war on talent has already started. Is your organization ready? Stick around, we've got you, right here on The Leadership Voice. Welcome to The Leadership Voice. I'm your host, Jay Barbuto. Today's show features the war on talent and what organizations are doing and need to do to be ready to fight for the best talent out there. Joining us today will be Dana Atherton, Senior Director of Global Talent Acquisition at Western Digital, and Greg Hauser, Executive Director of Global Talent Acquisition at Ingram Micro. We also have a special leadership lesson being delivered by Professor Lori Muse. But let's start things off with today's quote of the day. Today's quote comes from Robert Half. Hard work without talent is a shame, but talent without hard work is a tragedy. Our first guest today on The Leadership Voice is Dana Atherton. Ms. Atherton is a global human resources executive leader and strategic business partner with experience in high-tech, marketing, retail, and healthcare industries, with a passion for connecting people and hiring top talent. She has a successful track record of driving cost-effective, efficient, and scalable sourcing strategies to attract best-in-class talent. As Senior Director of Global Talent Acquisition at Western Digital, Dana is a strategic business partner and talent advisor. Dana is responsible for creating and executing talent strategies to address gaps and aligning needs with business objectives. In her personal life, you may find Dana spending time with family, friends, and her dog, Maddie. She also enjoys traveling and cheering for her favorite sports teams. Dana graduated from the University of California, Irvine with a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology. So it is with great pleasure to welcome to The Leadership Voice, Dana Atherton. Dana, so great to have you on the show today.
So wonderful to meet you and to be here today. It's a pleasure.
Great. Well, maybe we could start things off and you could share with us a little bit about your career journey and sort of the steps that you've taken to get to where you are today.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I graduated with a degree in psychology, and I've always been a people person, and I knew I wanted to apply it to business. I didn't want to go necessarily into the cognitive piece of psychology, so I took a lot of industrial organizational psychology classes and decided HR was the career for me. And I started out being an HR assistant, where I kind of dabbled in a number of the different HR aspects, and almost immediately, recruiting was the one that I gravitated towards. And that soon became a passion, and I moved into recruiting roles at Coldwell Banker, and then also went on to be with a rehabilitation services company in the healthcare sector, building out a recruiting team, hiring for skilled nursing facilities all across the country. Did that for about 4 years, managed a team there. Ended up then going into a marketing role as a director of recruiting, overseeing both field recruiters and in-house recruiters that were hiring top talent to represent Fortune 500 companies in field marketing initiatives. Did that also for 4 years, seemed to have, at that time, a bit of a 4-year track record. And then went on to Pacific Sunwear, where I was in-house recruiting for buyers and designers. I developed the university recruiting program from scratch there, and went on to be promoted into a management role and leading the in-house recruiters for Pacific Sunwear in the corporate headquarters. Did that for a couple of years. My boss ended up leaving and went to Western Digital, and about 6 months said, in about 6 months, I'm coming after you. And I said, yeah, I don't know. I really love fashion, and I that was kind of, I think, a good fit for me. And I thought, hard drives at the time, which is really what Western Digital was doing. I don't know if that's for me, but I also knew that high tech I didn't have in my repertoire. It was one of the industries I didn't have. So she convinced me, And I went over there, and to be honest, in the first year, I wasn't even sure if this was a fit because I'd never dealt with engineers before. This was a big change for me to go from dealing with a lot of very right brain individuals on the creative side to the highly analytical. And I can honestly say that 1 year has turned into 12 years. So I learned the business, and I was recruiting for a number of different areas. I think I've in my course of 12 years, hired probably close to 1,000 people in the business in all areas, and worked my way into, again, management role, which eventually led to senior management, director, and ultimately, after we brought 3 companies into one, Western Digital acquired Hitachi's global storage technology and also SanDisk. So the past 3 years, been heads down, bringing 3 companies into one and rebuilding a professional recruiting team. And that's what ultimately led me into the senior director role when we had those acquisitions.
Well, a lot of people may not know about Western Digital and what they really do there. Could you just share with us what is the business of Western Digital?
Yeah, so Western Digital is really the world's largest data storage company. So we no longer brand ourselves. I think people may have known Western Digital in the past as really a hard drive company. With the recent acquisitions of HGST and SanDisk, which I think most people know as a compelling brand, we now are over a number of different facets of data storage, from the consumer side to the enterprise scale side, to the flash products that SanDisk provides. So there's a number of different brands that, including SanDisk, that are under the Western Digital umbrella. But I think what most people are fascinated by and would probably resonate is that more than half of the world's data is actually stored with Western Digital.
And that's really exciting. So could you describe, in your role is in a variety of roles of talent acquisition, but could you talk about the function of talent acquisition?
Yeah, absolutely. So talent acquisition in a large company environment actually comprises and can comprise a number of different areas. The area that I specialize in is really on the professional recruiting side. But talent acquisition also encompasses university recruitment. In our particular organization, it encompasses global mobility and global mobility solutions. It also encompasses recruitment operations, and what we call programs, which includes talent branding, contingent workforce, the relationships that are kind of being built to fuel the professional recruiting and the university recruiting, the folks that are kind of behind the scenes that are helping us enable to get that talent brand out there. So there's a number of different areas that go into talent acquisition. The one that I focus the most on is the professional recruiting for the company worldwide. Oh,
that's great. So how, in your experience, and you've had such incredible experiences working in a variety of different roles, could you talk about how the competitive environment for talent has changed, especially recently?
Yeah. So everybody talks about the war for talent. It's very real. I would say the competition to attract, hire, and retain top talent is as fierce as it's ever been. So I don't think that it's going away. And I think that there's a number of things that companies have to face now as they're going through this. And it really kind of, starts at the top. I think it comes from the executives down, and they really have to embrace a mindset that getting, top talent is key to the organizational success. And they have to really own talent strategies and work with HR and talent acquisition to really drive those talent strategies and align them with the key strategic business strategies. So that's really key. They also have to embrace a culture that is, in this day and age, extremely diverse, inclusive, and collaborative. And that really, again, stems from the top to create that environment. I think going forward, it's going to really require companies to not only embrace that, but create a compelling employer brand that's going to resonate and align with that, and that's what's going to kind of make a marked difference. We know in this day and age, that the changing nature of work, the changing dynamics of the workplace, I think will require executives to be more open in their communication, more transparent. That is what people are looking for. They want to be, again, part of that inclusive environment where they know that they're heard, but they also want to have that open, transparent communication. So it'll be important for executives to also, emulate that. And again, just really create that culture that's embracing those areas. Generational shifts. We know that, even Generation X, but X, Y, and Z, they're looking for that inclusive environment. They're also looking for impact. It's, okay, what is my job, but how does it impact the company? So they want that bigger picture. They want that tie back. What is it that I'm doing, and how is it going to impact the organization at a greater level? So it's important that companies recognize that in order to compete, they're also going to be able to have to offer that to employees as well.
So as we see that things have changed.
Yes.
And they're going to continue to change.
They will continue, yes.
So what do you believe organization members that are watching the show, organization members that know they're going to need to compete for talent, what do they need to do right now to start getting ready if they're not already ready? What do they need to do to get ready to compete in this competitive environment?
I think it's twofold. So one, I kind of go back to, if the executives aren't already exhibiting more open, transparent communication, they need to do that. If they're not already creating this compelling, inclusive culture, they need to do that. And then companies really need to create a compelling talent brand and an authentic employee value proposition. We call it EVP. And they have to ensure that that is, translating both and communicated internally and externally to the marketplace, but internally to their employee population as well. And that's really where the competitive advantage comes through. So in talent acquisition, we aspire to create competitive advantage through people. And we have to be able to then take that messaging, both internally and externally, to really attract the best talent. So if you have a compelling talent brand and a compelling value proposition, that's what's going to set you apart from other companies and from your competitors. If you can showcase your culture, your benefits, your growth opportunities, and that's going to, really be compelling and resonate, that's what's going to separate you from your competition. So the winning companies will have that, and then they'll also have the executives that are backing it up and that are also embracing that transparent culture and inclusive culture. The ones that don't are the ones that are going to be behind.
So it's not just about, maybe it was a long time ago, it's not just about title and salary.
It really isn't about title and salary. I really think with the generational shifts, it's about reach, impact, value, and again, that inclusion. The other thing that really is resonating with this generation, Y and Z, is a sense of community. So companies that really have a strong commitment to their communities, that is also resonating, and that's part of what we do in our messaging is we let recruits know a lot about what our commitment to the community and to the various charity groups that we support. That's important to them. And again, it's about that impact. How am I going to be impactful in this organization and the variety of work that I'm doing? And so it isn't just about money and title anymore.
This has been terrific. Now, if you could offer advice to a earlier career talent acquisition professional, somebody that would like to someday be in shoes similar to yours, what advice would you give to an aspiring talent acquisition recruiter? What advice would you give to somebody?
I think, again, this is a career that you really have to have a deep passion for. It's not just a people career, it's an impactful one. So, I think they have to find the purpose in recruiting. And it's interesting. I actually went to a conference a couple years ago, and they had done a survey, and actually recruiting came back as one of the most purposeful professions in every profession. And you would think, oh my gosh, over doctors and, it is one of the most purposeful. And so I think my advice would be understand that you are impacting someone's life by recruiting them to a fantastic opportunity. And you're impacting the company by bringing in top talent that's going to help the company continue to achieve their objectives. So it's extremely impactful. And again, it goes back to that, it's about relationships, it's about that impact, and it's about that value. So I think it's digging deep to find how you can bring your passion and help get a company to recognize the top talent as well as provide that impact internally. And there's a quote from Maya Angelou that I love that says, it's not about what people say or what they do, it's about how people make you feel. And I think in the end of the day, my advice would be emulate that and make people feel that impact when you're bringing them into the company, and even when they're in the company. Try to still follow up with them, and how are they providing that value to the organization.
Oh, that's terrific. I want to thank you, Dana, for being on the show today. We're going to stick around because we're going to have Q&A.
Great.
We'll have you and Greg up here.
Perfect.
We're going to take questions from the audience.
Okay, that sounds great.
And now it's time for a featured segment of the Leadership Voice. It's today's Did You Know? Today's Did You Know comes from Capterra.com. 76% of hiring managers list attracting high-quality candidates as their top challenge. At the same time, 79% of employees believe that employers should share responsibility for health and wellness with their employees. So, if your company is like most others and attracting and recruiting top talent is your biggest worry, then you need to make sure that your company is taking care of your employees' health and wellness, because this is a major step towards becoming a preferred workplace. It's now time for today's Leadership Countdown. Today's show is Winning the War on Talent, and to do this, you must be able to attract and retain top people. So with help from Entrepreneur.com, today we bring you the 7 steps to making your organization a great place to work. Number 1, treat employees with respect. As a manager, if you treat employees with respect and dignity, they will automatically reciprocate this sentiment to the organization. Number 2, adopt greater flexibility. A recent survey on workplace flexibility found that 53% of respondents preferred telecommuting. Number 3, ensure appreciation of good work. Praise should flow generously in your organization. This encourages employees and endears them to the company. Number 4, instill a culture of teaching over reproaching. In short, you need to create a learning organization where mistakes are treated as opportunities for development. Number 5, embrace diversity. Culturally diverse workplaces enrich employees by shredding their prejudices, widening their horizons, and enlivening their learning experiences. Number 6, encourage cooperation over competition. It is important to nurture employees that are trained to jump to each other's help rather than pull out the rug. Number 7, involve employees in CSR initiatives. In 2014, a Nielsen survey on corporate social responsibility found that 67% of employees preferred to work for socially responsible companies. So, if you can follow these 7 keys to becoming a great place to work, then maybe your organization will be better equipped to attract and retain the best talent. Please stick around. We have Greg Hauser in the studio, and we'll be right back after this commercial break.
Well, we found here at Honda Center and the Anaheim Ducks that the Center for Leadership brings expertise in doing research, in doing training. The faculty that has come and given the training to our employees does all the research themselves. They're not pulling this information off the shelf. They're out there researching themselves, talking from firsthand experience, and it brings such a level of competency that we, again, don't find from other trainers that are on the market.
Well, simply put, is what really differentiates and distinguishes Fullerton and the Center for Leadership, really is your expertise. You guys are able to create customized content for our business based on true research.
The faculty from Cal State Fullerton, obviously they're professors of their field, they have deep knowledge in research, but also, aside from the theory, they really bring in some practical examples, and they bring in a lot of interactive activities.
The Bringing Learning to Work initiative is our way of meeting the needs of Orange County businesses and communities. When our clients ask the Center for Leadership to come to bring learning to work, the clients know that they're getting cutting-edge information, the latest thinking in the field, but they're also getting world-class training. Welcome back to the Leadership Voice. Our next guest today is Greg Hauser. Greg is the Executive Director of Global Talent Acquisition for Ingram Micro. In his current role, Greg leads a team of talent acquisition professionals across the globe who facilitate cost-effective, efficient recruiting processes to develop robust talent pipelines and meet the organization's vast resource requirements. His focus is on recruitment analytics, talent branding, developing best-in-class recruiting teams, implementing process improvements, and client customer service and satisfaction around the world. Greg draws from over 15 years of recruiting experience in tactical and strategic roles at a number of Fortune 500 organizations. Throughout his career, Greg has helped organizations evolve their recruitment approach and strategy to further strengthen in-house expertise, leverage new channels and technologies, and refine recruitment analytics and key performance indicators. Greg has a Bachelor's of Science in Information Technology from Syracuse University, in addition to many professional certifications. Please welcome to the Leadership Voice, talent acquisition expert, Greg Hauser.
Thanks for having me, Jay.
Greg, it's great to have you on the show.
It's awesome to be here.
Greg, why don't we start by telling our audience a little bit about the different roles that you've had and how you eventually came to be in your current role at Ingram Micro.
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, I went to Syracuse University, and I don't actually believe there is a degree you can get in recruiting. So, my journey has been through a lot of different avenues to get to where I am today. So I came out of school with a degree of information technology, IT, specializing in software development and also systems infrastructure. So if you think of me, I was thinking about being an IT professional. That was really my goal. Mm-hmm. And so I worked in some small startups for a little bit right out of school on the East Coast, and then I got the opportunity to come out west and work for a game company, Sony Online Entertainment, in their compatibility lab. So game testing, if you can think about it that way. That generally led me to come back up to Orange County. I met my wife at school, and she was living in Orange County, so that was kind of the connection to come here. And we were going to be married, so that was the draw, and the commute down to San Diego was just way too much. But in that process, we started looking at positions in Orange County for me, and especially in technology. And I got a call from a recruiting company, a local recruiting company, and they asked me a couple of questions about my technology background, and they wanted to place me in a couple of different roles. But they invited me into their office and basically said after that meeting, we don't want to place you anywhere. How about you come work for us? He's like, technology, you can talk to people about technology, and you seem like you could do this function of recruiting. And at the time I was like, what is a recruiter? I have no idea what this is, but I'm willing to do it. Sounds like something fun. And that's where I really got my first experience recruiting and learning what is it like to really qualify a candidate, to take to talk to a hiring manager, understand what they're looking for, and place someone into that particular role. And so I did that for about a year. I moved in-house because I was working for an agency at the time, and I thought that I wanted to be more on a team environment, recruit for one company, because I have a background in sports. I'm a big fan of the team and the environment, and I wanted to make an impact with my team. So that kind of started my journey in corporate recruiting. And I started at a company called AmeriQuest Mortgage, which is no longer around, but that was my first start in corporate recruiting. Worked my way up and became more specialized in technology recruiting because that was my background. I moved from AmeriQuest over to Broadcom, which is a very large company in this area as well. Worked as their in-house recruiter for their corporate roles and technology roles. Did that for 4 years or so. And then really moved on to some other companies too. So I worked at First American CoreLogic, did that for a few years, and then moved over to Ingram Micro. Really in an interesting manner. One of the candidates I was trying to place at CoreLogic moved to Ingram Micro at a very senior role, and he decided that he'd ping me for an opportunity to help Ingram Micro's internal talent acquisition team really start to rebuild what they were doing. So now I've been in Ingram almost here 7 years now, and I'm just enjoying every day.
A lot of people may not know what is the business of Ingram Micro. Maybe you could talk just a little bit about what Ingram Micro does.
So really, Ingram Micro is the largest distributor of technology in the world. And by technology, you can say it's anything you really can plug in to the wall, right? We work with all the major brands and vendors or major brands that you know of today. And we move their products from their centers all the way to the end customer and the full life cycle in between. So one of our taglines is we help businesses realize the promise of technology and customers realize the promise of technology. And it's really that solution for anyone that is looking to purchase technology, whether you're a customer or a company in the B2B space, or even to the end user, right? You really don't realize where your technology comes from. Everything in this studio, Jay, most likely there's a point where Ingram Micro touched it, whether it's in our warehouse distribution center or we were part of that, the deal that made the technology come to your studio. So it's interesting. I learned something new every single day as well.
The reach that your company has is absolutely incredible.
Yep.
And I think people don't even realize how much of an impact sometimes certain organizations are actually
Absolutely.
having.
We're behind the scenes a lot, right? And it's easy to see, open up your laptop and you see the label and the brand that you're working with, but really the process to get that technology to you, there's a lot that goes on, and there's a lot of great people at Ingram that make that happen.
That's great. So talent acquisition.
Yep.
We hear a lot about it with recruiting, with talent acquisition, the strategic role. You especially love an analytics side of things.
Yep.
Could you talk about your general philosophy of talent acquisition and how does that interface with talent retention?
Yeah, and it's funny you ask because a lot of times I get asked the question, how large is your recruiting team? Especially by my peers and other people, when they ask what I do and I talk about it a little bit, they ask, how big is your recruiting team and talent acquisition team? And the reality is, our company is 33,000 employees worldwide. I always say we have 33,000 talent acquisition or recruiters in our organization, because that's the truth. My function, or the role that I have in the organization, is help to enable key talent to come in to open roles or potential opportunities we have. But it really starts with that mindset that everybody's a recruiter. Everyone needs to understand that talent is everywhere. And some of the things I get to do is really help hunt for that. So individuals that maybe are not looking for a new opportunity, and I can present them something new or interesting. And then also, that process of engagement once they've heard about us, they're interested, making sure that they have the best experience possible working with Ingram Micro in that process. Because at the end of the day, they may not get the role, but our philosophy in talent acquisition is we want them to be a fan of Ingram Micro regardless if they get the position or not, because you never know who that person is. First of all, they may be a good candidate in the future. They may know people that interact with Ingram Micro. They may know the president of your biggest customer. So you always have to have this mindset that, number one, everyone's a recruiter and we always have to be recruiting. And number two, treat everybody the way you treat your best customer or your family, essentially, right?
Well, that's a great philosophy, and a couple of really good pointers for folks to really think about. So many people believe that we are already in a war for talent. And over the next 5, 6, 7 years, we're going to have the largest exodus from organizations that we have ever seen as the boomers are approaching retirement ages.
Right.
So it could actually become even more pronounced. What do you believe organizations need to do right now to start getting ready for what they're going to be facing here in the next 5, 6, 7 years?
Yeah. And it's a difficult question because there's a lot of things that you need to do. You've got to constantly be thinking about. The term of war on talent actually came in the late 90s. So we've been in this for quite some time, right? Through peaks and valleys of technology boom and then even the lulls of the mortgage crisis and everything else, right? So talent is always, it's always going to evolve. Companies are always going to evolve. So the advice that I'd give, especially as you're kind of tailoring the question towards the exiting workforce and then the new workforce coming, is just making sure you understand where your talent is at and meet them where they're at, right? And what I mean by that is you have exiting boomers. The reality is the boomer generation is actually staying in work longer and longer and longer because it's more difficult to retire as it once was previously. So what are opportunities that cater to that type of associate or individual, whether it's a part-time, whether it's a change of work environment, they have flexibility work hours, they can work from home. So you're catering to the type of role that you need, as well as the individual or the individual that would potentially be looking for that. The big topic now is the gig economy, right? So how are you catering to individuals that they don't just have one job that they go to and come away from, right? They have multiple positions. They work from 9 to 5 and then they're driving Uber just to make a couple of extra dollars. So how do you deal with the gig economy? So companies got to be thinking about this. It's not just open a position, fill a position. It's what is our total talent acquisition strategy? There always is going to be a portion that's on the contingent labor side. It could be that that there are roles that you don't need someone 24/7 or in a full-time capacity. And what are those? So the company has to understand really how are they utilizing talent in all different areas. You'll always have your core workforce, but then what is that flex workforce? And how do you address that? So I think that's going to be a key thing. Ingram Micro is doing it right now. We're really looking at contingent workforce, and our vendor management system is a new project we're rolling out globally, which is quite a huge undertaking. If you think about it, we have probably a third of our workforce is contingent, meaning they're from another provider and they're doing business at Ingram Micro. So how do we manage that? How do we use that as a competitive advantage? How do we flex and just to the business needs? So that's what I think companies really need to be thinking about, is how their total strategy is as it relates to talent.
I love how when you talked about how organizations have to embrace the role, collectively embrace the role of talent acquisition, of recruiting, that we're all recruiters, and that mindset has to pervade really throughout the organization. What trends do you see need to be embraced by organizations if they want to become a preferred workplace?
So there's a lot of things that go into it. In fact, when you look at some of the recent studies that are coming out, whether you're looking at LinkedIn and some other things, they list the top reasons why people either leave a company or take another job or rate you on one of the rating sites a particular way. A lot of times it's about the benefits and compensation structures that the company has, the work-life balance or the flexibility at work, the vision of the organization or what the impact is on the organization, what's the core of why they're around, as well as just how fulfilling the work is, or what's a challenging workplace. So those are that always comes up when people are looking at, or at least when they survey people of why they're looking to move on to other opportunities. So if you think about that, how do you structure an organization so that all of those things, your individuals, the employees that work at your organization, they have the opportunity for competitive compensation, right? They have opportunity for a fulfilling work environment. They feel like they're not just showing up to a job. That's just part of their life, right? That's just who they are. I think what Dana mentioned earlier, that her passion is recruiting, right? And so if you asked her the question, do you show up to a job every day? I guarantee you she would say no. She'd say, you know what, my life is recruiting and I have my home life and everything else. It's just my life balance, not work-life balance, right? So I don't know if I'm going off a little bit off the question, but how I look at it is really making sure that organizations really focus in on making sure their associates have a fulfilling work, right? They make sure that they're constantly improving and upgrading their talent by training as well. I mean, we didn't talk about that. That's more of a retention strategy. But from a recruiting strategy, this is some of the reasons why we're able to pull some individuals out from companies as well, is talking about those key hot points that we can pull them into our organization because of how we do it at Ingram Micro. So.
And the work they do has to be meaningful. They have to feel impacting, like they're impacting things, that the role that they're performing is one that's crucial in some way to the organization that they're working with.
Yep.
And so what advice would you give, Greg, to a young, aspiring talent acquisition professional that wants to move forward in their career and perhaps at some point reach the point where they would be the head of talent acquisition at a large organization? What advice would you give somebody early career?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I think it's one to be open-minded to the role and the function in the organization. I think that what separates, or what categorizes a great recruiter or someone that's in a talent acquisition function is that they just get it. They're naturally inquisitive. It's not just looking at a job description and trying to match someone to that. It's really being able to interview and understand what a hiring manager or what the company is looking for, or truly understand your company so that you can paint a picture of what is it like here. So that you have to be naturally inquisitive. You have to ask really good questions, meaning that I'm really trying to understand who you are, why are you doing what you do, what your purpose is, and then match that with someone either in our current organization, an internal associate, or someone from outside the organization, because they match exactly what you're looking for. So, that's probably that, being able to ask and be comfortable being uncomfortable, because it's challenging sometimes. You meet with folks that are individuals in the organization that are in the CEO job, the president's job, the senior director's job, or a highly skilled role in technology that you may have no idea of what they do because you're not a technologist. But how are you asking them really good questions so you understand what they're looking for and then be able to match talent to it? So I think those are kind of the key things, and being proactive. Always being proactive. That's what we do. We're not a reactive, what it was once called, personnel. Like that's like the old school term of what our talent acquisition teams once were, which is send your resume in, just send me the list of resumes that you get. Now we're talking about, hey, I'm going to find you the best person in the market as fast as we possibly can through all different channels. So now that's more of a consultative business partner that our teams are looking at. So that's where I would say anyone looking to get into TA, they have to have that passion, that excitement, that natural ability to engage and being comfortable in an uncomfortable situation.
Yeah, and it sounds like there's a real opportunity for feelings of purpose and achievement.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I just placed a VP at this place. I just found a new president for South America, or whatever it might be. It sounds like there's incredible.
Well, if you think about it, Jay, the top life-changing situations you can possibly be in, right? What are they, right? You can buying a home, getting married, and finding a job. Those are huge decisions people have to make, right? So that people don't realize that, but you're working with people's livelihoods, their emotions. They could be moving from a country to another country or a state to state. They have a lot of, they put a lot into trusting you that this is the right decision for them. And you're that point person that has had the most contact with them along the way. So that's a lot of, that's a heavy burden to carry, right? When you're working with individuals, but it's so fulfilling when it works out. And that's why you get better and better over time. And you make sure that it always works out. But
yeah. And so one advice we might give is, after hearing this interview, does it make you even more want to be in talent acquisition? Because I think that the passion that you've expressed during this conversation, I think is a good litmus test for others. That if they share that passion, then they might be right in the right place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Greg, I want to thank you for being on the show. Now we're going to come back and do Q&A here in just a few minutes. Okay. We're going to have you and Dana up here. We're going to take questions from the audience.
Sounds good.
We'll do that all together.
Thank you.
It's now time for a feature segment of the show, the Leadership Example, where we recognize great examples of organizations onboarding talent. So we bring you the organizations in the United States that will be hiring the most people in the upcoming year. From Amazon to General Dynamics, here are the companies that will be the most active recruiters in the country. Hear that? You know what that means. It's time for today's leadership lesson. Today's lesson is being delivered by Professor Lori Muse. So let's take 3 minutes to learn about the recruitment of talent.
Hello, I am Dr. Lori Muse, and here is today's leadership lesson. Businesses today are at war. Not a war with guns and grenades and bombs, but one with possible fatal consequences to organizations. I'm talking about the war on talent. Ernst & Young recently reported that when asked what keeps them up at night, 75% of business executives reported attracting and retaining talented people as the #1 reason. Adding to the intensity of this issue, experts predict certain key industries will experience a labor shortage over the next decade. So how can your organization better prepare for the war on talent? There are 3 key approaches to positioning your company to win the war on talent: succession planning, differentiation, and creating a memorable employment brand. First, succession planning. If your organization waits to consider options for filling a critical position until a person announces that they are leaving, you have already lost the battle. This is what makes succession planning so vital to the war on talent. To get ahead of the curve, HR experts recommend that for key mid to upper level positions, you will need to continually review who could be ready to step into the job quickly. This approach will allow time for you to refine and develop their skill set by providing training and development, relevant experiences, and mentoring. This will make the process of them stepping into the job seem more seamless. Second is differentiation. You need to consider what makes your organization stand out to applicants. It is important to remember, just as your organization is performing a selection process for the right employee, applicants are also doing their own selection process for the company that is the best fit for them. What does your organization provide its employees that is different from your competitors? This is referred to as your employment value proposition. Southwest Airlines, for example, offers a fun working environment. Google differentiates themselves with the unique benefit programs they offer to their employees. Other organizations on Fortune's 100 Best Companies to Work For list focus on flexibility in assisting their employees to achieve more of a work-life balance. Third is creating a memorable employment brand. This is essentially the tagline that captures a job seeker's attention and compels him or her to consider applying. Google, for example, is known for their work hard, play hard. Lululemon Athletica has had great recruiting success with "It's not a job, it's a journey." And who can pass by a recruiting ad for Southwest Airlines with a tagline of "Welcome aboard the flight of your life"? To sum it up, to better position your organization to win the war on talent, your company should implement succession planning, differentiate your company to your applicants, and create a memorable employment brand. I am Dr. Lori Muse, and this has been your leadership lesson.
Thank you, Professor Muse, for that insightful leadership lesson. It's now time for the Leadership Voices Q&A. Viewers, do you need some leadership advice? Well, you've come to the right place. Every show we take questions from you, our viewers, and we answer them right here on the show. Today we have 4 questions for our guests. Thanks again to our 2 guests, Dana and Greg, for helping us field today's Q&A questions. Our first question is for Dana Atherton, and it comes from Seth in Costa Mesa. Seth asks, what do you think will be the next big thing that will separate companies in the ongoing fight for great people?
That is a very good question. I think there's a number of things coming, but if you had to say the next big thing, I would probably say on the data analytics side, artificial intelligence and predictive data, predictive analytics. So I think that corporations are going to need to invest in data analytics, not only within human resources, but within talent acquisition, and push the envelope to really be incorporating artificial intelligence and using that predictive data to enable them to make better talent decisions, because there are so much talent out there right now in this competition. So I think that's what's going to set them apart from, again, other organizations. And then it's also, so it's twofold. I think the other thing is really ensuring that companies have HR has a seat at the table. And again, that they are, something I said earlier, they're really setting a strategic talent strategy. And then they're letting HR and talent acquisition have a seat at that table and help them understand the business strategy and then drive that talent strategy to really go out and get the best talent.
I agree. A lot of good stuff there, Jay. And you touched on a lot of the same things that we're looking at Ingram Micro. It's really how do we incorporate artificial intelligence into our recruiting process. But on the flip side, too, candidates have to understand now, in this day and age, that they're going to be interacting more so with chatbots and quote-unquote robots in the interview assessment process, which is it's a change for them. So it's both the companies need to evolve to make sure that they have these practices in place to make their processes efficient and compete, but then also on the talent side, the candidates need to understand that that's what's going on as well, and how do they continue to evolve as well and communicate that way. So
we're gonna see some changes in the way things are gonna move in the future.
It's already in place, so you don't even realize it.
It's in place, but yeah, more to come for sure.
Oh, that's great. Our second question is for Greg. It comes from Jin in Roland Heights. Jin asks, how does recruitment challenges change when doing it globally? What are the cultural challenges of recruiting worldwide?
And this is a great question, right? Because I don't think there's one solution for every country. The way that we approach it at Ingram Micro is more so from a think global, act local. That's our philosophy. And even my role is as a center of excellence. So I'm not going to mold and change the way we do recruiting in our major countries, right? It's really the expertise within the country, and then making sure that we all follow the same practices. So what we've adopted to and what's made us successful is following same processes and utilizing technology. So we went through a process of moving to one platform where that anyone around the world can actually see what's going on in any market. Moving away from disparate systems. And to give you insight, Ingram, before we implemented this new solution, had 6 independent applicant tracking systems, which is essentially a system where resumes go in. Now, if my CEO or my head of HR asked me how many open positions do we have in any given day, it would take me days to collect that information because we don't have access to it at one point. So I think that when you're thinking about global talent acquisition, as much as you'd like to think that you have oversight to every country and how they operate, it really is the expertise within the country, the culture, the practices from a legislative standpoint, and really how how it is done within that organization or that company, and then specifically in the location we have in the country. That's that's their responsibility, right? As long as I give them the tools, technology, and process to be successful, and that's what makes it work.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, Greg. And I feel your pain because with 2 major acquisitions over the past 3 years, I had 3 applicant tracking systems as well that all had to come together into one a year and a half ago. So it is very cumbersome from not only an internal perspective to get metrics, but a candidate experience when people are having to go to 3 different career sites to apply for jobs. So pulling that all into one, I think, is critical for global talent acquisition. And I agree with you on the sense that, I think the way we operate as well is we provide kind of an overarching best practice and strategy for talent acquisition that is for the entire function globally, but it's really the local talent acquisition teams in each country who are the resident experts. They know what these folks want in those particular areas. Some use technology more than others. We obviously have regions around the world who are a lot more tech savvy than others. Here in the US, LinkedIn is probably the #1 place that people go to broadcast their job journeys. That is not the case in certain parts of Asia.
Right.
So it's really tapping into, from a sourcing perspective, where these talent pools are coming from on a global scale. And they're not all coming from the same places. So we really have to rely on the feet on the street and the ground troops in each country to understand what the cultural give and takes and that value proposition is locally.
And so the way we recruit in different countries can differ.
It can differ.
And the strategies we take.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Oh, great. So our third question is back to Dana, and it comes from Fat in Westminster, California. Fat asks, in light of the competitive landscape, what advice do you have for candidates considering new opportunities?
So great question. I'm sure right now, as we know, especially, I work in Silicon Valley a lot, and, because that's where we're headquartered now, the turnover is very high. So, and it's an extremely competitive landscape. So with as many options as there are out there for various companies, how does one decide, who they want to join? And it's really going to go back to what I talked about, that value proposition. What is this company going to be able to provide to me? And again, it's not just about the salary, the title. It's where's the impact, where's the value, where's my growth potential, and what's the culture? So what is the underlying culture, and how is that embraced? Is it inclusive? Is it diverse? Is it going to allow me to be impactful in the work that I do?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And for top talent looking at opportunities, the goal is that they're finding a place where they feel that they're contributing. Again, going back to that, this is not just my job, this is my life. That's one element. From a different standpoint, right? Because there's a lot of new students coming into the market, or students graduating, trying to find that next opportunity as well. It can actually be challenging, right? Because you submit all these resumes all over the place, and maybe you only hear from 1 or 2 companies, or maybe none at all. And so that's a challenge too, even though we're a very competitive marketplace. There's a competition for the best talent. And as we talked about technology and artificial intelligence, guess what? They're picking up on skill sets that are ranking candidates higher than others.
Right.
So being someone that's new to the marketplace or looking for an opportunity, you can't just rely on submitting a resume. That's table stakes. That's getting your information into the system. It's who are you connected to on LinkedIn? How much research have you done in the organization? Who can you reach out to? How do you find out more? And the individuals that stick out the most and build those relationships, companies are going to take more of a risk and a chance and talk to those individuals as well.
Oh, that's great. So our fourth question comes back to Greg, and it comes from Phil in Foothill Ranch. Phil asks, what do companies need to do to keep their best talent?
If I had the answer to that, I wouldn't be on this TV show.
You have the Holy Grail.
Well, you are on this TV show.
I'm just kidding.
So you have to have the answer. Because all our other guests always have the answers.
It's right, and I think retention is a term that's used a lot, right? How do you retain top talent? How do you retain talent? And it could be so many different things. And you got to remember, right? We're dealing with people. People can make decisions based on the color of the carpet in your office. right, on whether or not they want to leave. And that might sound very small, but it actually is true. People make decisions for the weirdest things sometimes. So you can't control that. But what can you do, right? You can continue to build an environment of inclusivity, a community of like individuals, and build a culture of embracing entrepreneurship and really developing your talents and everything else. And you do that through a lot of different, it doesn't have to be just an HR function. No. Again, it goes back to the core of the organization, the leadership, the managers, the line managers, because to be honest with you, that's where a lot of the turnover is in your line management. So how are you equipping your line managers to be the best leaders and developing new and future leaders or individuals that don't want to lead? Right? That's the key. And I think that's what organizations, I know Ingram is investing heavily in our leadership development, our Women in Leadership program. A lot of this is really to build that solid workforce of aspiring leaders or leaders that can drive a workforce to new levels that they never thought they could be. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really the secret, is making sure that your employees feel value and you're equipping them with the right tools to be successful.
Yeah, 100% agree. I was going to mention value as well. It has to be a pervasive mindset by the executives and all the way down. So he's right, it's not just HR, it's those line managers. They have to have that mindset of how are they empowering their people? How are they continuing to create opportunities for them? How are they making them feel valued and impactful? And that has to flow through the entire culture and through the entire organization.
And it seems like there's just a trend that we're just seeing and it's a trend that we've been seeing for a number of years, where we just focused on the work. And now they're just, the emphasis is really shifting. And companies that are succeeding are really focusing internally and focusing on their teams.
Yeah, your production of that work is going to be, tenfold if you have these other factors and you know that your workforce is fueled by all these other intrinsic areas.
Yep.
Terrific. Well, I want to thank you both for being on the show and helping us with the Q&A. You took us through some really great questions, and we really appreciate you both being on the show to share your wisdom and thoughts. If you need advice, send your questions here to the Leadership Voice by email, leadershipvoice@fullerton.edu, or by Twitter @CSUF_leadership. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today's show. Today we tackled the war on talent and provided many insights around how organizations can better compete for the best of the best. Thank you to our guests, Dana Atherton and Greg Hauser, for joining us, and a special thank you to Professor Lori Muse for delivering today's leadership lesson. Join us each episode of The Leadership Voice when we bring you more insights into business leadership. I'm Jay Barbuto, and on behalf of the Center for Leadership at Cal State Fullerton, we'll see you next time right here on The Leadership Voice.